So good day everyone! We are the Group 3 and our topic was all about the challenge of ethical subjectivism. So before we go beyond to our topic, the ethical subjectivism, so let me ask you this question. So imagine you're a doctor in a hospital. A patient comes in with severe illness and the prognosis is not good. So the patient asks you directly about their chances of survival. So you believe in being completely honest with your patients, but you also know that this news could cause significant distress and potentially harm to your patient's mental health. So, how would you handle this situation? Would you tell the patient the complete truth because you believe honesty is the best policy? Or would you consider the potential harm and withhold some information to protect the patient's mental health? So, here happens na makonect siya sa ating ethical subjectivism. So
it's kind of cool because
what comes to your mind when you hear the word ethical? I know you would tell me that it is an act of doing the good things, or whether we choose to take the actions, there's always an options that we need to decide which leads to a moral failure. So, some people might think that ethics is just a matter of whether they approve or disapprove of certain views or actions. However, it is a complex field of study that involves systematic and critical examination of moral choices. For simplicity, they would rather base notions of right and wrong actions on their feelings or sentiments about particular issues. So, at this theory, it already violates the first principle of the minimum conception of ethics, which is something matter to the reasoning that is rational and not based on emotions or preferences. So, here, let's define what is ethical first. So, ethical is doing what's right and wrong. It's about making choices that are not just legal but also moral and fair. It involves treating others with respect, honesty, and kindness. So, what comes to your mind when you hear the word ethical? I know you would tell me that it is an act of doing the good things, or whether we choose to take the actions, there's always an options that we need to decide which leads to a moral failure. So, some people might think that ethics is just a matter of whether they approve or disapprove of certain views or actions. However, it is a complex field of study that involves systematic and critical examination of moral choices. For simplicity, they would rather base notions of right and wrong actions on their feelings or sentiments about particular issues. So, at this theory, it already violates the first principle of the minimum conception of ethics, which is something matter to the reasoning that is rational and not based on emotions or preferences. So, here, let's define what is ethical first. So, ethical is doing what's right and wrong. It's about making choices that are not just legal but also moral and fair. It involves treating others with respect, honesty, and kindness. So here in our topic, we would distinguish that why these actions or frameworks cannot be utilized to justify whether a certain action or decision you take is ethically right or wrong, or is it based on emotion, that's why is it correct, or is it considered as wrong or in a right thing. So for further explanation or the continuation for our lesson, I'll give the floor to Ms. Cristel for her topic, the ethical subjectivism, and followed by the two phases of ethical subjectivism, which is the simple subjectivism and the emotivism, which is further discussed by my classmates, groupmates, and conclusions.
Good day everyone, I'm Priscilla Visar Samotan, and today I will discuss ethical subjectivism. So what is ethical subjectivism? It is centered in the idea that our moral opinions are based on our feelings and nothing more. The evolution of the theory, it began as a simple idea in the words of David Hume on 1711 to 1776 that morality is a matter of sentiment rather than fact. But as objections were raised to the theory, and as its defenders tried to answer the objections, the theory became more sophisticated. So, pinapalabas ni Hume na ang kanyang pananaw na ang mga moral na pagsusuri ay mga pahayag ng personal na damdamin o pananaw kaysa sa pagtatagpo ng objective moral na katotohanan. So this means that moral judgments are not based on objective facts or reasons but are rooted in the subjective and emotional responses of individuals. So sinasabi ni Hume na kapag gumagawa ang mga tao ng mga moral na pagsusuri, hindi sila naglalabas ng mga pahayag tungkol sa inherent na mga katangian ng mga bagay o kilos. Sa halip, pinapahayag nila ang kanilang damdamin o emosyon tungkol sa mga bagay o kilos na iyon. So, para sa kanya, ang moral ng mga pagkakaiba ay nagmumula sa damdamin ng pagsang-ayon o hindi pagsang-ayon ng mga tao sa particular na kilos. So, Hume presented his view that moral judgments are expressions of personal feelings and attitudes rather than discoveries of objective moral truth. So, para sa kanya, sa pamamagitan ng pagsasabi ang moralidad ay isang bagay ng damdamin kaysa sa katotohanan. So, ibig sabihin, ang mga moral na pagsusuri ay hindi nakabatay sa objective na katotohanan o rason, kundi nakaugat sa personal at emosyon na reaksyong ng mga tao. Ang mga ideya ni Hume ay may malaking epekto sa pagunlad ng ethical subjectivism na nagtatangi na ang moral na pagsusuri ay pangunahing nakabatay sa mga damdamin at pananaw ng individual o kultura. So example of ethical subjectivism involve two individuals expressing their views on a particular moral issue such as lying. So in this case, individual ethical subjectivism would suggest that the morality of lying is dependent on each person's subjective feeling or beliefs. So for example, person A might say, lying is always wrong because it goes against my values of honesty and I feel guilty when I lie. So in this instance, person A is expressing their subjective opinion based on their individual moral feelings and values, while person B, on the other hand, might argue that sometimes lying is justified, especially if it avoids hurting someone's feelings or prevents greater harm. So in these cases, I believe that lying is the right thing to do. So the person B is expressing a different subjective opinion, indicating that the morality of lying is contingent on the specific circumstances and their personal beliefs. So in this example, ethical subjectivism would posit that there is no truth about the morality of lying. Instead, it depends on the attitudes and beliefs of the individuals involved. So each person's stance on the morality of lying is seen as a subjective expression of their values and feelings rather than a reflection of an external objective moral reality. So in simple terms, ethical subjectivism is the idea that what is morally right or wrong depends on individual feelings, opinions, and beliefs rather than on any objective standards. So, the two ethical subjectivism or the two phases of ethical subjectivism will be discussed by Mr. Janmark Valderrama Magpuhos.
A pleasant day to all of us. So in this video, it is the continuation of the lesson 9, the challenge of ethical subjectivism. So in ethical subjectivism, it has two phases, which is simple subjectivism and the emotivism. And my assigned topic is all about simple subjectivism. So let's focus on this topic. So in this lesson, let's define the concept of simple subjectivism, analyze the several issues of simple subjectivism, and understand the dilemmas by applying this kind of ethical subjectivism. Okay, before we proceed, let me discuss again the description about what is ethical subjectivism before we tackle about simple subjectivism. So again, simple subjectivism is the philosophical view that moral judgments and values are dependent on individual opinion, feelings, or perspectives. Again, it's dependent on opinions, feelings, and perspective of individuals. Then, let's moving on to the first type or phase of ethical subjectivism, which is the simple subjectivism. What comes into your mind again if we talk about simple subjectivism? So its main idea is that moral statements express the personal attitudes or personal preferences of the individuals. When we talk about personal attitudes in applying simple subjectivism in a certain situation, like let's say for example of simple subjectivism and ethical subjectivism to illustrate the concepts. Okay, we have the specific scenario here. Imagine a group of friends discussing the taste of a particular dish. Let's say for example sushi. So person A says that he don't like sushi, it tastes bad. But person B he says that he loves sushi, it's delicious. So in this scenario, simple subjectivism would suggest that the statement sushi is bad by person A is purely a reflection of his personal taste and preferences. But according to simple subjectivism, the truth of the statement is confined to the individual subjective experience. So there is no objective standard for determining whether sushi is objectively good or bad. It depends solely on each person's personal feelings and their opinions. Moving on to the scenario of the ethical subjectivism, consider a debate about the morality of a controversial action such as lying. So again, person A argues that lying is always wrong, no matter the circumstances. But person B counters or responds, he believes that lying can be justified in certain situations like protecting someone's feelings. So in this case, ethical subjectivism suggests that the moral judgment about lying is dependent on individual attitudes and beliefs. According to ethical subjectivism, there is no objective moral truth about whether lying is universally right or wrong. It varies from person to person based on their subjective views and their moral principles. So, in both examples, the key idea is that the truth or morality of a statement is tied to individual subjectivity rather than objective standards. So, in both examples, the key idea is that the truth or morality of a statement is tied to individual subjectivity rather than objective standards. Okay, I have a video clip here.
Hello, how can I help you?
Hello. I would like a table for 4, please.
Of course, please follow me. Here's a table for 4.
Thank you. Could you give us the menu, please?
Yes, of course. Here you are.
Thank you.
Can I get you anything to drink?
Just water for me.
I'll have a lemonade.
I'll have a milkshake.
I'll have an orange juice.
Great, I'll be right back. Are you ready to order?
Yes, we are. I'll have the grilled chicken and a salad.
Would you like a starter, sir?
Yes, I'd like the vegetable soup.
For starter, I'd like the vegetable soup. For the main course, I'd like the grilled fish.
I'll have the chicken soup and the lasagna.
I'll have the chicken soup, the grilled chicken, and some salad.
Excellent, I'll be right back.
It smells so great.
I'm so hungry and I want to eat, but the soup is so hot, I can barely touch it.
Wait for it to cool down before you eat it.
The grilled chicken tastes delicious, doesn't it, Paul?
Yes, Dad, it does indeed.
What about your lasagna, Amy?
I love it. It's my favorite dish.
Great.
How's your fish, Mom?
It's excellent. I'm so glad we came to this restaurant. Could you please pass me the salt, Paul?
Here you are, Mom.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy your meal?
Yes, it was wonderful, thank you.
Would you like something for dessert?
Yes, for dessert, I'll have ice cream, please.
I'll have the chocolate cake.
I'll have ice cream.
I'll have the cheesecake, please.
Everything looks great. Let's eat the desserts.
Dad, I'm thirsty. I would like to drink some water.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir. How can I help you?
could you bring my son a glass of water, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Can I bring you anything else?
No, thank you, just the bill.
Okay, sir. I'll be right back with the bill.
Okay, as we've seen in the video, the main idea of simple subjectivism is when someone says that something is morally good or bad, or should I say right or wrong. So this means that he or she approves or disapproves of it and nothing more. In other words, moral goodness or evil is reduced to the approval or disapproval of someone. But yet, there are going to be problems when we view ethics in this way. This kind of thinking cannot count for our fallibility o pagkakamali. We cannot also say that someone is wrong because having to express has to depend on someone else's approval or disapproval. If this is the case, then everyone is correct. This similarly cannot account for disagreement o hindi pagkakasundo between two parties. We cannot also disagree with someone anymore because everyone is correct and there is no more room for it any longer. Okay, that is about simple subjectivism. And that's it for my report. I hope you've learned something about it. And yeah. To continue and explain the second phase of ethical subjectivism, which is the emotivism, it will be discussing by Miss Micaela Ojeda. Thanks for listening, guys, and God bless.
Pleasant day to each and everyone. My report is about emotivism. This was developed by Charles L. Stevenson 1908 to 1979, an American philosopher who is one of the most influential ethical theories in the 20th century. Its core thought declares that some language is used for stating facts, or at least what we believe to be facts. Stevenson believes that in ethics, the language is not fact-stating, not typically used to convey an information, you ought to do this or thou shalt not do that. Emotivism is a meta-ethical theory that asserts that ethical statements or judgment are expressions of personal feelings or attitude rather than assertion that can be true or false. It is a non-cognitive theory, meaning it denies that ethical statements convey objective information about the world. Emotivism means asserts that in ethics, the language is not fact-stating, not typically used to convey an information, but mainly express an emotion or command or expressing an attitude. For example, statement, torture is wrong. In emotivism, torture makes me feel afraid and uncomfortable. In the proposition, same-sex marriage is good, we get to know that this is fact-stating because we can check whether it is true or false. Otherwise, another kind of language is used to simply express an emotion or command, such as same-sex marriage, ew. Thus, declarative statements state a fact, convey an information or reporting an attitude like, I like Duterte. On the other hand, exclamatory or imperative statements do not state facts but mainly express an emotion or command or expressing an attitude like, Mabuhay si Duterte. But then, certain outcomes become problematic when we begin to absolutely consider every human activity in this way. We may find it disturbing to think of willfully murdering a baby. However, this act does not become ethically wrong just because it is emotional unsettling. There is a logical or reasonable explanation apart from emotions that make this act unethical. For instance, if we allow this act to perpetuate, imagine what the world would become then. From our perspective, it will most probably be chaotic, as in similar to those post-apocalyptic societies depicted in movies or TV series like The Walking Dead. So in emotivism, it contributes to a profound understanding of the connection between emotions and morality. Despite criticism, it opens the door for an announced examination of the role emotions play in determining right or wrong conduct. This challenge lies in integrating emotions into thorough analysis of morality that acknowledges the significance of emotional responses in ethical decision-making. It's important to note that emotivism has been subject to criticism and has its limitation. Critics argue that it doesn't provide a solid foundation for moral reasoning and that it can lead to a form of moral relativism where conflicting moral claims are reduced to mere expression of personal preference, without any possibilities of rational resolution. In such hypothetical scenarios, people are no longer ruled by reasons but by dark scenarios of compulsions. That's all. Thank you for listening. And that's about emotivism.
Blessed day to each and everyone. Today, I will be discussing about the importance of moral facts. So when we say moral, it is concerned with the principles of right and wrong behavior and the goodness or badness of human character. So it is not enough for ethical judgments to only be about expression of our emotions, preferences, or sentiment, but it must also be supported by good reasons. So this means that ethical judgments should not solely be expressions of personal emotions, preferences, or sentiment. Instead, they should be substantiated by rational and well-founded reasons. In ethical discourse, it's not merely about stating what one feels or likes, but providing compelling justifications for why a particular ethical stance is reasonable or justified. This requirement for good reasons adds an element of objectivity and rationality to ethical judgments, moving beyond subjective feelings to a more robust and defensible ethical framework. So there is a phrase which says, murdering babies is generally wrong because. So when we say that, we should provide the best justifications there are for this claim. So facts must be related to the judgment, just as premises or reasons must lead to conclusion. Otherwise, a fallacy or logical mistake is committed. So this statement is highlighting the importance of relevance in ethical judgments, with how reasons or premises need to be connected to a conclusion or to conclusions in logical reasoning. In simple terms, when making ethical judgments, the facts considered should actually matter to the judgment. It's not just about throwing in any information or personal feelings. If the facts aren't related to the ethical decision at hand, it's like using the wrong puzzle pieces. They don't fit and you might end up with a mistake. So, think of ethical judgment like a logical argument. In a good argument, the reasons you give or the premises should logically lead to your conclusion. If your facts aren't connected to your ethical judgment, it's like having a logical mistake or fallacy in your argument. It doesn't make any sense. So in both ethical judgments and logical reasoning, the key is to make sure that what you're considering, whether facts or reasons, is actually relevant to what you're trying to decide or prove. If not, it can lead to errors. It can lead to errors in judgment or flawed reasoning. So, logical influence, not psychological or emotional, is the one that is necessary to bring about relevance between the fact and the judgment. So, logical influence refers to using reason and sound logic to connect the facts to the ethical judgment. It's about making sure there's a clear and rational link between what you know or the facts and what you decide or judgment. The statement highlights that when connecting facts to ethical judgments, it's crucial to rely on logical influence. This ensures a more thoughtful, reasoned, and unbiased approach to ethical decision-making, in contrast to being solely driven by emotions or psychological factors. So ethical truths then are veracities of reason, that is, judgments being true because it is supported by better reasons or facts than mere subjective feelings. So this means that ethical truths are determined by reason, meaning that ethical judgments are considered true when they are supported by stronger and more rational reasons or facts, rather than being based solely on subjective feelings or emotions. In other words, the validity of ethical claims is tied to the strength of the logical support and objective evidence behind them, emphasizing a rational and reasoned basis for ethical truths. So, to conclude everything in the report of Group 3, the challenges of ethical subjectivism highlights the difficulties associated with the idea that moral truths are solely dependent on individual beliefs and perspectives. These challenges include the potential for moral relativism, the lack of a universal ethical framework, and the difficulty in addressing moral disagreements. Ethical subjectivism faces the task of reconciling the subjective nature of moral judgments with the need for a coherent and objective basis for ethical reasoning, making it a topic of ongoing debate in moral philosophy or ethics. So that's all for the report of Group 3. Thank you!